The Law of the Rubber Band. First time I ever went that chapter, I went, what is he talking about?
This is a hard, this is my, I joke every chapter is my favorite. Every week. This is my
that was last week.
Yeah, but this is my least favorite chapter, but maybe the most important chapter in the book.
So I wasn't going to say that, but I was going to say that it's a bit of a stretch. Yep, and I was going to read that, and also I was going to go through about little 4 pages worth of notes here, and then let you kind of pick one of these questions and tie us back into what he's trying to communicate. So let me read a couple of these. What you just read, I'll read again. Growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be, and could's the exchange word there, right? Only a mediocre person is always at his best. That's a quote from the book by W. Somerset Maugham, or whatever you say. I was going to say mayhem, but that's not true. All right. God's gift to us was potential. Our gift to God is developing it. Focus on part of this stretching is building a legacy. So one of the benefits of tension, that is, the stretch, right, is few people want to stretch, really pull that tension and in their growth. And too many people settle for being average. Settling for kind of a status quo, I guess, if I reword this, is ultimately leads to dissatisfaction, meaning we get kind of bored with who we are and we don't stretch ourselves. We kind of get stuck. I think the words for me works in this chapter was stuck, right? We're either moving forward or we're stuck. Do we choose a comfort zone over potential? That could be a big one.
Is that the way he says it in the book? I love the way you said it.
I just made it up.
Yeah, I love the way you said that because I think most of us do choose to stay in our comfort zone instead of going for our potential. We focus so much on how we're performing, not on our potential.
It says it needs to be from an inside out perspective. It's the growth doesn't come from outside in, it comes from inside out. And I think that's something we've communicated through all these chapters so far. That seems to be an ongoing theme. And stretching always requires, here's that one again, Danny, change. Stretching can become a lifestyle, which is, and I guess that word could be exchanged for habit, right? Because once we start really trying to stretch ourselves, we might form habits that keep us in that mode. And then stretching gives you a shot at significance. All right, so here's the questions, Danny. I'm going to talk slow because I want you to, these are kind of herdism questions for you to dive into, and you can pick whichever one you want and focus on it. What areas of life have you lost your stretch? So what areas of life have you lost your stretch? The next one is a how question. How do you maintain the stretch? How do you maintain that tension? How do you maintain pushing forward with your growth? And does stretch, and here's that word we love, Danny, does stretch involve goals? So in my question, my answer to that would be involve systems to reach goals. All right, Danny. So I've run through my notes and I put a lot out there to think about, right? And so it's now time for you to put your wisdom on us, my friend.
I don't know, we'll say how wise this is. I'm just going to go with these 3 questions I just wrote down. So, what areas of life have you lost your stretch? How do you maintain your stretch? And does stretch involve goals? And then you commented that your answer to that last one, that stretch involves processes. Rise to our level of our goals, we fall to the level of our processes to obtain those goals. And, that goes into my whole deal about goals are in concrete, plans in sand. You should never have to reset a goal. You reset the plan, and the time is inside the plan. I know I keep hammering that almost every week. It comes up. But what areas of your life have you lost your stretch? I'm just going to speak to my current thing. I lost my stretch, with my physical. I did a 48-mile. I walked a 48-mile ultra marathon back in March in 48 hours. I did a thing called 75 hard, and decided to take off about a month to beginning with about the 15th of May, because I thought I just worn myself out to start training for the Austin Marathon. Figured I was going to start training late June, by July 1st. Wasn't feeling well one day and ended up going to the hospital and had a bypass. So I can tell you that I've lost my stretch in the last
got stretched.
yeah, or in the last 5 weeks, and I'm having to relearn that stretch. And hadn't thought about this chapter. So I've read this book, 15, 18 times since it came out 12 or so years ago. Just stepped through this process, and there's a whole lot of stretching. Kind of like my rubber band has shrunk. I think most people lose their stretch. I'll say this: people that I'm thinking about, one guy in particular I'm coaching right now. He's lost his stretch when it comes to reading. Reading books is one way that you can stretch. Read books with the idea that you're going to learn about what the author is talking about. You don't have to own it. Too many times we go into reading a book and we want to be judgmental about what the author says. You just finished a C.S. Lewis months-long program with what university?
Hillsdale.
No doubt you learned some stuff that he said that you didn't agree with, but you kept learning what Lewis said. And that is stretching your knowledge. Judgment keeps us from stretching. Okay. When I go, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I don't like the way he said that.
So Danny, another, I don't want to interrupt your thought, but another process, another set of words that may stop the stretch you might hear yourself say to yourself is, that won't work for me.
Yeah, that won't work for me.
So keep going.
Many times that won't work for me might be because I don't have the time, I don't have the resources, I don't have the money, I don't have the materials. Well, it's not what we're talking about. You can find the time, the resources, the money. Resources, time and money are resources. So much of our culture gets offended. We create drama, but we're looking to be offended. I go on Facebook, and if I start reading comments, it's because I'm wanting to be offended, I'm going to be, and I know I'm going to be, but it's the drama from it. Okay, if you read most of the stuff you read, you won't be. So how do you maintain a stretch? Slow. You slowly stretch. When I weighed 40 pounds heavier than I do now, 8 years ago when I turned 60, I wanted to be able to walk 2 miles. And then I wanted to be able to walk 5 miles and all like that. But I wanted to do it and not hurt myself. Because, every other program I'd gotten on since I was 40, I always end up, pulling a muscle.
Sure.
Ankle problems, actually ripped a calf muscle once. And so I wanted to, so how do you maintain that stretch? I'm going to tie that into, does stretch include goals? If it doesn't include a goal, it includes a vision. Okay. I vision how healthy I want to be when I'm, back in my early 60s, I'm 70, 80, 90. God keeps me around that long. And I end up so I have a vision of that health, that healthy guy that's having a better quality of life than what most people that get into those ages, have. But then you set goals along the way. My first goal, I had that vision, and I've been working on it for a while. And then I wrote on my top of my mirror that I wanted to be at 225. And I think at that point I weighed 238. I want to get down to 220. And this was in January, whatever year that was. My goal was 220. My plan was to do it April 1st, 3 months. I got there on March 26th, a year later. Okay. Right. So I had a goal associated with the stretch. And I just, I just don't believe that we need to, everything that comes up. My goal, it was on my calendar to be on the call with you at 2:50. An alarm went off at 2:30, but that wasn't a goal. That was my intention. It was on my calendar. It's not a goal. Some people call those goals. And we wear out that whole goal thing, and to the point that we stop stretching. We get tired. We stretch. I can't take any more stretching. Well, it's an emotional thing so much, and but the goal is, if you set a goal and you just keep working a plan, evaluate and correct, then you get to that process that you talked about. You have a process for obtaining the goal. We fall to our level of processes. We don't rise to our level of goals.
Yeah, and I would say that within that system of the goals and that stretch, right, that as you've always said, plans are made in sand. You have to give yourself permission as you're going up those stairs, up the ladder that we talked about last week, right? That system can be adjusted, can be slowed down, can be sped up, can be, it's at the idea is you're following a system to reach the goal. The goal may end up being longer term than you thought. It may be short term, so that it just makes sense that while we're stretching, which led me to another question when I was reading this book is that are there times when we need to relax the stretch? Right.
Yeah. And a lot of times that is, sorry to interrupt you there, but a lot of time that's when you've got to reset the plan. You got to put a new timeline on the plan. You got to evaluate what you did. And too many times we think that we failed when it was what happened was we just had a plan that didn't work out, and we need a pause. Sometimes we need a pause for to give us time to evaluate and correct. I love and I do this with people I coach, and I got it. There's 4 places that I got this, including the 12-week year. Brian Moran says that you take 3-4 hours a week during working hours and go off by yourself. Okay. Take that pause, build that into your plan. A friend of mine right now is off on a 2-day retreat. Now he's staying at home, but he lives in Cedar Park. He's gone to Lakeway, Spicewood, or he's gone somewhere just to hang out where people don't know him, and he can pause and reflect and pray and do some journaling, do a little bit of reading. He left his house this morning about 7:30. He'll be home tonight about 7. Going to do it again tomorrow. And and so the answer to your question is that we have to schedule these pause periods, or we just have to take a pause, during instead of failure. A lot of times we just didn't fail, unless you want to count that plan. Plans never work. The original plan never worked. Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Isn't that funny that plans are conceived up here, right? But they've not really been physically or mentally put into process yet. So what's in your head may have to have things change along the way. So you're right. I mean, everything changes in a plan.
Yeah.
Adjustments have to be made. Look at building a house. I mean, I just look at a simple thing like building a house, right? You make the plan, you have the blueprint, but as you go along, you find out, well, that door probably shouldn't have been built that place, right? It needs to be moved or something. So yeah, I get that. The other thing is, Danny, I was thinking the other day after doing the C.S. Lewis thing, is that if we can put in our heads, am I participating in my growth?
Explain what I think I know, and I've got some comments, but
I was thinking that we're conscious of the fact that we want to grow, that we find the process to be enjoyable, that we find the process to want to grow to be something that should make ourselves feel real good about who we are, right? So I take that simple word participating in that and say, are we conscious and participating in our growth?
Too many of us are not. We're like leaves being blown about. The Bible says chaff, this stuff is being blown about. And we're growing because we're changing. We're just growing. We're just growing mold.
Yeah.
Most people are not, to answer your question, most people are not aware of their growth. They're not participating in their growth. They're not, or they are participating, but it's an absent-minded thing. And they're stuck in a comfort zone. They want things to be different, but they're not willing to change. They're not willing to change the people they hang around with. They're not willing to change what they're listening to, what they're watching, or to start reading. And everything else I said was change. Change people you're hanging out with, change what you're listening to, and change what you're watching. But start reading. It's a rare person that really reads much, if anything at all, other than online. But to pick up a book or even a Kindle book, online book, they just aren't doing it, and they're stuck. And then let me know, they'd rather complain about all the things going on in the world rather than change themselves.
Gotcha. So final thoughts, my friend.
Final thoughts. I'm going to jump to the very end of this book. And John says, as much as any athlete I've ever read about, Ted Williams lived by the law of the rubber band. He understood that growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are and where you could be. And that's my whole thing around, focus on your potential, not your performance. For most, back to the quote, for most people, as time goes by, they lose the tension that prompts growth, especially if they experience any success. Oh my gosh. We could do another whole session on that, but having less tension makes people less productive, and it undermines the growth towards their potential. Remarkably, when it came to hitting, Williams never lost that tension. Long after he retired from baseball, he still talked about hitting with anyone who cared about it. He was continually learning, continually sharing what he learned. We should all strive to be a little more like him. And this is the guy that, he was around back in the 40s and 50s after the war. And, he he has had. There's been. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nobody since him has hit 400. Okay, he's the last person to hit 400. And
there's been some. I think Kirby Puckett came real close before when he was around, and I think some other George Brett came really close to that at one time. But to maintain in baseball, 3 out of 10 is considered real good, my friend.
Yeah, well, and this was a career average.
4 out of 10 is incredible.
400 was his career average, not 1 year.
I know. I mean, it's incredible when you think about it. That's cool. That's a great way to look at this. So how much stretch out do you think he was to learn to be that good a hitter, huh? Hey, guys, so we're in week 10. We've got 5 more weeks to go. Danny, you got your book right there in front of you. Can you tell us what we're diving into next week? The law of something.
Law of trade-offs.